really happy to have with us our panel of, I wouldn't just call them supporters, but they are really linchpins of the ecosystem in digital healthcare, with Victoria, Kris, and Theresa coming in from Withum, Goodwin, and Femovate. It's just incredible when we look at the ecosystem in women's health tech, and we look at the cornerstone of it and what it consists of, and just how extraordinary these folks are in making sure that we have the very best support to help build up the very best companies. It is amazing to see what they've done, and looking forward to the panel now and talking with them. So welcome, everybody. We wanted to hear from some extraordinary support system providers here and hear more about that. Let's start with if we could just get like a 1-minute thumbnail from each of you just on your backgrounds, and we'll go the way I'm seeing you on my screen, at least, which is clockwise, with Victoria, and then Theresa, and then Kris. So Victoria, if you could start off with about a minute or so, since we're short on time, and then Theresa, and then Kris. Go ahead, Victoria.
Absolutely. Great to see everybody. So my name is Victoria Iezzi. I'm a senior manager at Withum. Withum is a top 20 accounting, tax, consulting firm. In the firm, we have our technology and emerging growth industry group. I work within that industry group mainly with auditing and financial statements, but we also have our women's health and wellness group that's part of our emerging growth and tech industry group. So, really fortunate that the firm values this space. A couple of years ago, my co-lead and I already had, just kind of generally in the environment, a fair amount of women's health and wellness clients. And so we were like, you know what, this is such an awesome space. It's so important personally to us as well as, to the world. So let's try to support, like you were saying before, Stan, and really just lend that helping hand where needed by being professionals to help out these up and coming founders, and then also investors and just the community as a whole.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And again, thank you for all the support of the ecosystem and the support system here. And Theresa, love to hear about the background of Femovate and what you guys are doing at Guidea. Could you give us a little bit of background on yourself and your company?
Yeah, definitely. I have to give a shout out to Withum because they have been huge supporters and very helpful. They're delightful to work with, Victoria in particular. So just wanted to put that out there. So my name is Theresa. I am the founder of a design agency called Guidea. We've been around about 20 years. And 2 years ago, we decided to create a women's health incubator to support early stage femtech startups. And in the past 2 years, we have been able to support 60 early stage femtech startups, and they have, we're starting to get some momentum. Let's see, half of them have launched products. A quarter of them are either in clinical or research trials, and 7 of them have achieved FDA clearance. So our theory is that by providing design capital to early stage startups, we're able to help them attract investors, potentially awards through grant programs, as well as get their product, a commercially viable product out to market. And so we wanted to pair up with HITLAB because I think we're kind of doing the same thing of supporting early stage femtech founders who really need that critical boost to get started, to really start attracting investment and strategic partners to bring these inventions to the world.
No, it's fantastic. Absolutely. And I think, again, no one thinks about women's health and doesn't think about Goodwin and Kris. Kris, as I try to go to as many things in New York City as I can, and Boston and whatnot. And Kris, I think, goes to every single one, sometimes 3 or 4. It's just unbelievable. He's such a supporter of the women's health tech ecosystem. Kris, thank you for joining us as a male ally. And again, if you could provide, for those few of you who've been living in a cave and don't know about Goodwin and don't know about Kris Brown, if you could do a little bit of background on yourself as well.
Well, that's a very, very kind introduction. Hello, everyone. My name, again, is Kris Brown. I'm a partner at Goodwin in New York City. I've been focused on this area for probably about 30 years, believe it or not, but it's only in the last maybe 5 or 6 years that Goodwin formed a women's health and wellness sort of subgroup to really focus and narrow in on this key industry sector. And frankly, it was to kind of erase some of the taboos that existed in the system, in the ecosystem, to also kind of show that we were leading a charge here, and to maybe normalize it if it needed such a direction, and to make sure that we brought to bear our connections to capital, angels, and just experience around how to deal in this somewhat mysterious world of raising money for this sector. I, in addition to being a lawyer who works with just a ton of startups in again, the ecosystem, I've been an angel investor for about the last 20 years. I actually put some of my own money where my mouth is into this ecosystem. Beyond this sector, I've probably been the first or second investor in about 90 companies over that time. And so I think I and Goodwin like to kind of bring to bear all of that experience as we help these companies. And the group on this in this chat is a great one for you to consider, networking beyond kind of the legal, accounting, and other expertise they provide, because I know at this stage just kind of getting introductions to partners, to money, et cetera, is super important. And I think everyone would agree that that's a role we like to play and hopefully can help you all with. My details are in the chat. I hope you'll reach out. Thanks again for this opportunity. I look forward to this discussion.
No, likewise. And again, let's double click on some of this. Again, you were all very, very kind to stay within the kind of 60 to 90-second range, just so we can get to everybody. We'd love to hear more about your background, your company's work, and how your companies are supporting the women's health tech ecosystem. And again, we'll go reverse counter now on my screen. So we'll start with Kris and then go Theresa and Victoria. But talk about some of the more tactical stuff, maybe some case studies where you've helped a women's health tech company, something like that. And again, I'll keep it about 90 seconds just so everyone can get a good shot at the answer here. Go ahead, Kris.
Well, I think maybe it started within Goodwin when I was asked to speak to really the firm about this ecosystem and this sector, perhaps about 8 years ago when we first decided to put in place a specialty group. And I think something that I tried to do back then was talk about things like pelvic floors and menstrual and periods and issues one has around female sexuality that, again, were sort of taboo, and to have it coming from kind of this middle-aged white male to this whole group, I thought was a way to perhaps, again, kind of make this more in the public sphere, because again, for whatever reason, it was really hard for people to talk about this stuff. As easy it was to talk about erectile dysfunction, it wasn't really possible to speak so freely about basic fertility issues. So that's one way in which I kind of helped jumpstart the set of conversations, which again, now maybe that seems old-fashioned to even raise, but I think we've fortunately seen quite a lot of change in law firms and accounting firms and really conservative places historically over just a very few number of years. And thank goodness, because with that, a lot of people reached out and said, hey, thanks for doing that. I've got a client that's in this sector. What do you think? And again, bringing that openness and bringing that ability to talk about things that I guess people feared somehow to talk about, which is absurd, to our, again, largely male-led venture firms and groups of angel investors initially, and making sure that this was something that could be discussed and was interesting and was a big market. And this was a group of people, who had a lot of money to spend. And so this was meaningful. Making sure that happened was something, again, I thought I kind of did somewhat tactically early on. But again, I think just naturally, because it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Fantastic. Theresa, again, double click on everything you're doing at Guidea and Femovate, and maybe some case studies on what you guys are doing to help women's health tech companies.
For sure. But I wanted to follow up a little bit on something Kris said as well. I've spent my career 25 years in tech. Until I got into women's health, I was actually uncomfortable speaking about my body or women's bodies or women's health issues. It was a very interesting first couple of months moving into women's health. I don't think feeling a little awkward is only what guys are experiencing. I think anybody can feel a little uncomfortable in this space, not knowing what what is going to be received well by the folks that you're talking to. So I appreciate anybody who's normalizing this, and I had to kind of get comfortable really quick so that I could do our best to engage with teams. So the program that we run is an annual program where we do a global call for applications to find early stage, so pre-seed, seed, and Series A femtech companies. We have a history of working with very early stage startups in the tech world and have 7 or 8 unicorns in our portfolio. So we're very familiar working with startups, but moving to women's health has been, like I said, different than working in straight tech startups. And so for each team that we work with, we create a bespoke research and design project plan within the constraints of the sponsorship that we provide. So it's a pro bono sponsorship. We wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable applying to us, and not worried about dilutive funding or should I give this company equity. We were just like, look, we're here to give. We have skills, we have experience with regulated devices, wellness apps, digital health. Let's bring that to early stage founders. So we create these bespoke plans, and then we have our team from Guidea work with the founders and their team to execute on the design and research. So every project we've done is different. And it's been a learning experience, I think, for us as well as the founders. We have founders coming in from the functional side of things. Maybe they're clinicians, so they run their own practice, but a tech company is new, or maybe they're coming from tech and the world of regulated healthcare is new, and that's quite a ramp up. Or we also have founders that are coming from lived experiences, and they are on a mission to ensure that nobody has to suffer like themselves, their daughter, their wives, their grandmother, whoever it is that's kind of spurred them to move a product ahead. And they might have to ramp up on tech and the healthcare ecosystem. And so we try to fill those gaps in addition to the design and research work that we're doing.
It's fantastic. And what a great way to help people out. There's so much need right now in design for sure. And again, I think going back to Victoria and double clicking on how your firm is helping so many folks. Again, it was at the reception you guys threw last week. A phenomenal, great time to meet so many key stakeholders and leaders in the ecosystem, and ran into folks who had been working with you and just love the work Withum's doing. Maybe you could double click and talk about some of the women's health tech companies and how you guys are supporting them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, overall as a whole, we really try to sponsor as much as we can and be as involved in the space as we can, right? Like we really feel providing founders and early stage women's health and wellness startups with these insights in accounting and kind of how to think about their company from the books perspective, right? Which I know everybody, when they're getting started, they're very focused on the drive and the operations, which they should be. But how can we help them be prepared from a books perspective, right? As you move forward with investing, that becomes a really big part, right? Do you have a solid set of financials? How are your taxes looking? How are you thinking about sales and use tax? Have you had a tax study done? All of those kinds of things. While they might not be the fun highlights, we try to provide that information early on, and at least give some tips and tricks if maybe folks aren't at the place where they need a professional to come in. At least they have some ground level thoughts of, hey, when do you need to have a professional come in to help you out? Other things that we do is we do have outsourced accounting opportunities as well. So for folks who just don't have the time to be in QuickBooks, you can reach out and we can connect you with our outsourced accounting folks. But from women's health and wellness and women founders in particular, we have our industry groups where, again, we're supporting the space, but we also try to bring together, like you were saying, through our various events, people from all different areas to gain the exposure. So in particular with our women's founders, we typically have an event every year with our financial services group, right? So we try to connect some folks that are part of the VCs or working with the VCs with maybe founders that are, female founders. So in general, we really just try to bring people together. We want to be there as a support for these folks. And again, excited personally as well as professionally to be able to help move these causes along and bring awareness to the space.
It's fantastic. And just the last question, we've got to wrap up in about 2 minutes. So try to, if we can, keep it within like 30 to 45 seconds each. We'd love to hear any advice that the three of you would have for startup founders, women in women's health tech, executives, folks who are leading these companies that are going to make healthcare more accessible, more affordable for women, not just around the country, but around the world. And again, we'll start now from your side, if you could, Victoria, and just maybe some parting words and advice that you would give them in terms of what they're endeavoring.
For sure. I mean, some things that I would definitely start with, and obviously this group on this this panel is a wonderful example of this, but just have a great team of experts there to support you, right? Like, I think that's the number one thing, is when you're ready for the experts to step in, make sure that you know and you trust the folks that you want to work with, and that they can kind of see from where you are at your stage for your company, right? And can kind of help guide you along. Like I kind of already said, don't discount a good set of financials. Don't discount having a good tax person. Having that from the ground up can help save you a lot of headache later on, which I'm sure Theresa and Kris have seen with other companies that maybe didn't have that stuff set up right away. And then also, just again, from the accounting perspective, be mindful of your runway. I think that's the number one thing, right? I know everybody is really eager to get these investments, get their Series C, Series A, and really kind of bring that money in, but just know, where is that going to lead, right? Okay, you got this, this $1 million investment, fantastic. How long is that going to last you? When do you need to raise your next round? Just be mindful of that, because it can go fast, right? Especially this day and age. So those are kind of my tips and imparting words from an accountant to be mindful of for all of our women's health founders.
Great. Theresa, same question for you.
Yeah, well, I have so many tips, but I don't want to go into tactical design tips. I think one of the things that's really standing out for me as we're working with early stage founders is founders are always really eager to get to the screens. But what's most important at the very beginning is finding product market fit. If we don't have product market fit, we're not going to be able to pull off a great product, even if the screens are amazing. So that upfront work to determine product market fit, who's going to buy this, what are they going to pay, is really critical. If you're getting started with that right now, make sure you do a competitive analysis and be very, very clear on what else is going on in the industry. We get hundreds of applications every year for Femovate, and we see a lot of duplication. And I think it's because people aren't quite familiar with going out and doing a competitive analysis and really understanding who else is out there, and making sure that you have a clear differentiator that can't easily be copied by somebody else already in this space. Another tip would be, as you're moving forward and selecting anybody that's going to be supporting your team, maybe it's in accounting, maybe it's in law, maybe it's engineers, maybe it's a design firm, get 3 bids. Why? So you can learn. If you haven't already brought tech products to market, this is a great opportunity to learn. And I would say it's crucial, because if you're going off, referrals are great. If you're going off solely or off of a referral, you're not really getting a good picture of what else is out there. You might ultimately go with the referral, but meeting 3 different companies, seeing how they're going to approach it, who works best with you, what's the best fit for this time in or phase of your company. We tell all of our teams 3 bids, because then you can see exactly how they're going to approach the challenge, and it might uncover a blind spot for you. So those would be probably my key tips. Start with product market fit, really understand your competition. And then as you're selecting groups to work with, make sure that you're doing a good job and looking broad to see who's going to be the best team to help you for this particular stage.
It's fantastic. All right, Kris, bring us home. Give us the last 3 tips you'd give here.
Some excellent advice that was just given by my 2 co-panelists. Maybe mine's a little bit overlapping, but I'll say that the narrative, the story that one is telling, is so critical to both bring in the investment that you need and to advance the company commercially. And so I just see far too many people spend not enough time going at a problem perhaps that they're trying to define in many instances, versus identifying a problem and coming up with a solution. So it's an old adage here that a company to succeed can't be a solution in search of a problem. There needs to be a big market opportunity, a big hole that you're filling with your offering, and how one tells the story about how you will address that big problem is super important. And people like accountants and lawyers and investors are often very willing to spend time with you at the very beginning stages to make sure that that story resonates. And that story, by the way, changes in terms of how one tells it depending upon the state of the market. You know, I look back on my career, and there have been about 6 sort of economic cycles. And, you know, we all know we're kind of coming out of a pretty difficult one now, and that's pretty exciting that we're hopefully going into an easier time to raise money. But, you know, in all of those cycles, there's money to be raised, and it's just how one tweaks one's narrative a little bit. You know, humans are really, really drawn to a good story, you know, and I joke, there's a big difference between, you know, what Elizabeth Holmes was doing with Theranos versus what, you know, a founder should be doing in terms of getting people excited about the potential of their business, telling them about this big problem that no one's figured out how to solve, and explaining how they've developed a solution that's proprietary in some way or can't so easily be replicated without a lot of time and effort to go after that big problem. And, you know, so take some time to practice that story, look at your deck, share it in front of friends and others and people who have a lot of experience, and make sure it's kind of up to date again with what's current before you go and pitch your first angel or investor.
Great advice. What a way to end it out. And again, thank you all, Kris and Theresa and Victoria, for joining us today.